it's fiefdomism, and we're starting to see increases in regulation. There's no regulatory relief in sight. Florida is probably poised to be, regretfully, one of the last states in the nation to recover. And it's because no local government is actually considering regulatory relief. They don't want to take any of the burden off property owners at all, period. They like the 5 inches of regulation that are on the books. They don't realize that businesses need about 1. So part of that evidence by 360, the legislator says we're going to speed up, we're going to create some transportation emergency exemptions. What do? You got the head of DCA saying, well, I interpret it slightly differently. Sorry, you're still going to have to wait 2 more years to bring billions of dollars of economic revenue into the state of Florida. I talked with attorneys the other day. We were talking about putting a group together. Collectively, they have investors that are willing to bring billions of dollars of investment capital to Florida to bring projects that they started 5 years ago out of the ground, and they're all held up at the DCA. But you might not get me started on that because I might not leave the podium. But I believe the basis for all this is just a lack of cultural education. When is the last time that you sat and joined a group of 100 of your fellow colleagues and talked about property rights? When was the last time you went home to the dining room table, talked with the guys at the golf course, and talked about the foundation of why property rights are important and why they should be protected and promoted culturally? We have entered a day and age where capitalism has to be promoted or it will not exist in our lifetimes. We never thought we would see that day, and it's here. Amendment 4, Florida's got a special little dose of fun coming its way. On the general election ballot, we have an environmentalist from Palm Beach County that decided she wanted to slam the door on growth and basically saying anybody who does not have a current land use label that's fitting for them will have to go to a public vote. That means a public campaign, a popularity contest, a referendum, if you want to change your land use label. It's similar to your zoning label. We just have 2 of them in Florida. They're very special and we like regulation. And so people have no idea the impacts. Small businesses won't be able to use properties that may be more affordable. Churches, hospitals, schools, none of the practical uses like an apartment complex or any type of changes like that. It'll all come to a halt. It's called hometown democracy, and I think basically, I think it would drive almost any new investment capital out of Florida. It's scary, and we'll work on that. So what can we do? Those were external threats. Internally, it's all about education. You know, we've met the enemy, and the enemy is us. We're not working together. As Doug said, when Bob's ox is getting gored, we're going over Bob. We're not standing with him and saying, what can we do to help? How can we change this? What kind of hope can we have as we look to the future of what we want our state and our community and our individual economic opportunity for ourselves and our children to be? And so it's really a reality check, one of those quiet conversations. Do we have anybody here with Charles Schwab? We really have to say, is it time for the sleeping giant in Florida to wake up when property owners realize that if they can fill a room, they can take back their government? Also, failure to understand, it's all about numbers. I basically said, give me an army of 100, 200, 300. I can change policy in Florida, and I have. And I take very special pride in the eminent domain reforms that occurred. And the reason I take pride in that is CPR commissioned, with the help of the Brigham Moore Law Firm, we have Anybody but Jackson this year, we commissioned a poll. I went to Mason-Dixon, borrowed their credibility, the CPR is a new organization, and I commissioned a poll that said 90% of Floridians believe property rights are very important to Florida's economies. 85 to 89% said no matter what the economic benefit, using eminent domain to trade up for people's property is wrong. I sat down and walked through a 30-page poll with all the crosstabs with the 2 people that wrote Florida's law. That happened because CPR existed, and what it did, Jeb looked at the numbers, Dan Webster from Central Florida on the Senate side, and Dean Cannon, who's the incoming speaker, said, guess what? I have got the public sentiment behind me to put in the strongest laws in the nation on eminent domain, and they did. And so, but that's numbers. And we'll go ahead and go through. Hometown democracy, I briefly mentioned. I'm trying to just go ahead and speed speed up because we've got some program to do here. But basically, in your packet, I've got 2 slides on hometown democracy. It's an amendment that's headed towards the 2010 ballot. Every single one of us needs to understand the power of 7. We've got to communicate with every person in our network at least 7 times, or this thing's going to pass and it's going to kill Florida's economy. Either we're going to do that, or we're all going to start packing, and we're going to take a loss on our property. Because this thing is bad, bad news, and I encourage you to look at not only what it is, but the reasons to oppose it, which is on the next slide that I'm going to skip. But it's on there. Opportunities. You know, this isn't just a bad news presentation. I've got a card here that CPR sent to 200 property owners in the city of Deltona, who are facing a special tax assessment that was 2 times to 3 times the property's value. There's an 84-year-old woman with 12 acres who received a bill that said in 90 days' time she would be subject to a tax bill of $412,000. That was a confiscatory assessment, and I believe that all 7 of the citizen commissioners that voted that forward initially were complicit in wanting to take those people's property. They knew if they placed a tax on that, of that scale, that people would default. But they did offer an option. They offered to finance it for 30 years. So the lady in Miami that had the 12 acres, $1.5 million would have been her total bill. We sent these postcards out. We said basically, your rights are impacted. Your ability to benefit from your property is being challenged. Here's the hearing date. Here are the people to call. We packed the house. We had property owners fly in from out of state. They protested it, and it basically went from 5-2 being approved to 6-0 that they wanted to permanently table it, never bring it back again. And that's the power of numbers and the power of having an organization with the wherewithal to send out orange cards when people need to hear about impacts to their property rights. And I think that the biggest thing that I like to say is I lobby. I'm a professional lobbyist. I know people in the legislature, and it's basically a tug of war. Okay? It's either the environmentalists and the liberals pulling on these guys and saying, hey, we want to erode property rights for public benefit or public purpose or the common good. Or it's you and I saying, wait a second, we're going to all get on this side of the road and we're going to pull this way. We're going to say, we're on the side of liberty. We want less government. But for a long time, I think you and I are aware, we've been letting the rope go. We've been busy working. I've been busy working. You know, how many here in the room have picked up the phone and called their congressman every day of the week with what's going on in Washington, D.C.? Okay, that's letting go of the rope, folks. But CPR is working to change that. In our last issues forum in Central Florida, we distributed a list of 600 elected officials, all their emails, everything. We encourage people, don't want to say this, but keep it in your cars, keep it at your house, wherever you got 2 minutes, and just call through. Because this is what holds people accountable. And that is the hope that we have, is that when you increase the numbers and when you collectively organize, we have just as much potential to change